my topic would be AIOCT in ocular surface, including tumors. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Somshila and the AIOS committee members for this opportunity. So in the next 10 minutes, I'll be taking you through the images, through the various images and the uses of AIOCT under these broad headings. So ultra high resolution AIOCT gives us the quality of image that we obtain from this device was earlier possible only by the histopathological examination of the layers, the individual layers of the cornea and conjunctiva. And therefore, it is also called as the optical biopsy. It not only helps in early diagnosis and management, but also to differentiate lesions that mimic each other and tracking the progression and to monitor the therapeutic efficacy for various treatments. So AIOCT in tear evaluation, the tear meniscus is actually a triangular wedge-shaped area measured between the posterior margin of the lower lid and the bulbar conjunctiva. The parameters that were used to calculate were the tear meniscus height, the tear meniscus depth, and the tear meniscus area. Now, studies have been conducted where these parameters have been compared between a surface of a healthy individual as compared to that of patients with dry eyes. So the most important use of AIOCT that we come across in our practice is to differentiate OSSN from other similar looking conditions. The diagnosis of OSSN is ocular surface squamous neoplasia is predominantly clinical because of the features of like surface keratin, presence of intrinsic vascularity, and presence of feeder vessels. But in a few cases like these, the diagnosis can sometimes be a little tricky, and AIOCT helps us in such ambiguous cases to rule in or rule out OSSN. So before we go ahead, let us look how a normal AIOCT looks like. This is the line scan image that are passing through the limbus. The first hyperreflective layer is of the tear film over the conjunctiva and the cornea. The second layer is the hyporeflective layer, which is the conjunctival epithelium and the corneal epithelium. The third is the episcleral or the subepithelial tissue, which is dense, compact, and hyperreflective. It has these small spaces, hyporeflective spaces, suggesting of the superficial vascular plexus. And the fourth is the deeper layers, which represents the sclera, which is also hyperreflective and is densely compact. So for our better understanding, we'll pay a little more attention towards how the limbus appears and the changes that take place over here. So the first case is of a 35-year-old female who presented with swelling in the left eye over the past 1 month. And as we see here, there was presence of a limbal lesion at around 9 o'clock with presence of intrinsic vascularity and keratin plaque on the surface and few dilated conjunctival vessels. The two differentials that were thought were actinic keratosis and OSSN. So an AIOCT scan taken through this image showed abrupt transition from normal to abnormal epithelium as seen here. There was presence of thickened hyperreflective epithelium as a conjunctival epithelium as seen here, and a plane, which is a well-defined plane between the lesion and the subepithelial tissue is visible in few areas, but is predominantly marked because of the marked hyperreflectivity and the backshadowing caused by the thickened epithelium. So based on these features on AIOCT, the diagnosis of OSSN was made and the patient was started on topical 5-fluorouracil. Now, at the follow-up visit, if we see here, this is the 1-month clinical picture and the AIOCT image. Clinically, this lesion appears to have resolved, but on the AIOCT, we see there is the abrupt transition has reduced, but the epithelial thickening is still prevalent with some amount of hyperreflectivity, and the cleavage plane is better appreciated here because the epithelial thickness has reduced. So based on this, though the clinically the lesion appears to have resolved, the AIOCT showed some amount of epithelial thickening that was remaining, and therefore the patient was given another 2 cycles of 5-fluorouracil. The second case is of a similar looking lesion in a 42-year-old female who had a swelling for the past 3 months. And there was a lesion which had intrinsic vascularity, presence of keratin, and dilated conjunctival vessels. The same differentials were also considered in this case. But looking through the AIOCT scan, as we see here, there was thickening of the epithelium with mild hyperreflectivity. There was a hyperreflective plaque of keratin at the surface, but there was no abrupt transition from a normal to abnormal epithelium, as was seen in the previous AIOCT image of the patient having OSSN. So based on these features, the diagnosis of ocular surface convex neoplasia was ruled out, and the patient was treated to have actinic keratosis. The third case is of a 37-year-old male who had history of chronic allergic conjunctivitis from the age of 7 years. And when the patient presented to us, he was actually referred to us because he was diagnosed to have OSSN elsewhere in the right eye. And as we see, there was a limbal lesion with this limbal nodule that was present with intrinsic vascularity and feeder vessels over here. The left eye had a cystic pterygium, and both eye had severe papillary reaction. So the ASOCT scan was done, and through the lesion that showed that the lesion was predominantly subepithelial with mild epithelial thickening and hyperreflectivity and absence of abrupt transition. So based on this, the OSSN possibility of the OSSN was ruled out, and also an incision biopsy was performed in the right eye, which confirmed the diagnosis of pseudoepitheliomatous hyperplasia, and the patient was treated appropriately. Moving on to the uses of ASOCT in scleral lesions, this clinical picture is of a patient of 40-year-old male who presented with recurrent episodes of pain and redness in the left eye since 4 months. And as we see here, there's a well-defined lesion that had dilated superficial conjunctival vessels, and there was presence of mild tenderness. So the differential the ASOCT image actually showed that the lesion was predominantly in the episclera. There was thickening of the episcleral tissue with dilated vessels as seen here as these hyporeflective spaces, and the overlying epithelium and the deeper scleral layers were uninvolved. So this is the last clinical picture where this patient actually presented with recurrent pain and redness over 3 months, and the patient had received ATT therapy 10 years ago. And there was this diffuse congestion that was present in the right eye over the temporal bulbar conjunctiva. The ASOCT here shows typical features of scleritis. That is, there is increased thickness of the episcleral as well as the scleral tissues with dilatation of these vessels in the episclera and the sclera. And these vessels, as can be seen here, there is the vessels travel superficially into the superficial plexus from the deeper vessels. So in the last segment, the use of ASOCT in LSCD, as we see, these patients can present in cases of chronic VKC or following severe chemical injury, where because of the extensive pannus and scarring, we will not be able to visualize the underlying cornea. So the infrared image that we see on ASOCT over here can help us to see if this patient needs an additional surgery, like a deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty or a PK for visual rehabilitation, which can either be done together or in a staged procedure later. And the thickness of the underlying cornea can also be assessed to the line scan. And we have to be careful in dissecting the pannus over the areas which are thinned out, because there's always a risk of perforation. So ASOCT, I would just like to summarize that it's a non-contact, fast, reliable imaging modality for diagnosis and management. The interpretation has a relatively short learning curve, and sometimes the anatomical changes may lag behind the clinical picture, and we need to continue the treatment because this is associated with recurrence, the premature cessation of therapy. And it is not only helpful to us, but it is also important. It makes it easier for us to explain to the patient the underlying ocular condition.